I'm not sure why we were talking about We Are the Champions, but
Well, because Katie was talking about Queen, so, you know, and then it kind of went sideways, but.
Jane,
All
you're
right,
recording.
I am.
Yes, you are.
Excellent. Okay, all to you, Mary. Thank you, Mary. That was beautiful. And I have the invocation this morning, so if you would please join me in prayer. Lord, bless this gathering of fellow Rotarians today. Please help us to see those in need and give us the strength and wisdom to serve our community as we should. Help us to lift the burdens of others while we maintain the dignity of humankind. Soften our hearts to be sensitive and loving as we serve together as Rotarians. In your name we pray, amen. And Scott Mullins has the pledge and the four-way test this morning.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the four-way test of the things that we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And you just changed the.
Sorry about that.
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you, Scott. And so I see we have a few guests on, but if you have a friend here and you'd like to introduce them, please do so. Because I can't quite see my screen and the gallery at the same time. So
welcome to Doris Wedge.
Yes, Doris, it's great to see you this morning.
Thank you.
Kimberly Sutton is here, and she will be going through Rotary information tonight.
Full. Do we have any other guests that that have not been recognized yet?
I've got some kinfolk on here, but I'll be talking about them and I'll introduce them later.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Do we have any happy dollars this morning?
This is Sandra. I have a happy dollar. Today is my youngest daughter's 29th birthday.
That's awesome.
I have a happy dollar. I'm heading to Tulsa after the meeting to go see my cousin who's in an assisted living facility. Have not seen her. I was the last person to get to see her face to face last March. And so I'm not the first person to see her after lockdown, but still, it'll be a nice trip to see her.
And I have a happy dollar. My mom's 90th birthday.
Happy, wonderful. Other happy dollars? Oop. Man, super sensitive. So not hearing any, but feel free to chime in if you do have additional ones. We do have Rotary information tonight for Kim Sutton. We'll be meeting at Blue in one of the living rooms up front at 5 p.m. If you'd like to join us, you are welcome to do so. We also have a board meeting this Friday via Zoom, and apparently I deleted the M or did not type an M. Not the zoo. We'll be meeting via Zoom at 7 a.m. And then, The district service project is April 24th. And since I'm the liaison, I'll talk a little bit more about that right now. We are going to be utilizing Rotary Park and the Rotary House for a non-perishable food item collection. And so benefiting, let's see, Food and Shelter, Salvation Army, and pantry partners will be our beneficiaries there. And we're hoping to gather 2021 items in honor of 2021. And I've sent out a link for Sign Up Genius for people to volunteer. If you can't quite get that one to work, if you want to email me, we're going to be doing 2-hour time slots beginning at 8 a.m. to set up and concluding at 6 p.m. To take the donation items to the beneficiaries after we finish up for the day. The idea is that it'll be a drive-through thing. We're going to utilize the parking spaces there in front of the Rotary House on Boyd Street for people to just come through and drop off their goods, their canned goods or boxed goods as a donation. I think we're also, so that'll be really nice, I think, for the traffic going westbound. But we are going to also have a tent on the other side of the street or some kind of collection point for those people who are going eastbound as well. One of our organizing members is with the Norman Police Department, and he's going to make sure that all the cones and regulations and safety things are set up, and so to create a safe environment to volunteer in, but also just to kind of keep the flow of traffic on Boyd Street running smoothly. And yes, we know that the spring football games that day, I think at 4 p.m., but we're hoping people who are going to the football game will be able to come out and volunteer or donate early. And those of us who are not watching football can kind of participate during while the game is going on. So I think I covered all the details. Did I miss anything, Connie?
No, I think you covered it all. We'll have lists of the needs for the individual nonprofits published, and we'll start getting out things on Facebook that you can share to your friends and just get the message out into the community. We want to include not just the 4 Rotary clubs, but the whole community on this. So
if we would like to just donate financially, how could we do that?
We're going to be able to take donations that day, or if you want to, I'm not sure how to, you talking about doing it outside of that Saturday?
Not giving it to somebody ahead of time.
Yeah. Yeah, you can, I guess, give it to me or Jane,
Yeah,
we're going to be splitting the funds up between the 3 organizations as well. So it's hard to say if you do a check who to write it to, but unless you want it to go to a specific organization. So let us think about that, and then I'll get back with you, Glenda.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have announcements that they would like to share before we
I
move?
do.
Yes,
Yeah.
this is David Ime. We are also having a lunch buddies tomorrow, and I'll send another note out today at 11:30 at the meeting place in downtown Norman. So if I think there's about 5 or 6 people who've already signed up. If you're interested, you can either send me a chat or just send me an email later today, and I'll make sure that we have enough seats available. But that'll be 11:30 tomorrow at the meeting place in downtown Norman.
Thanks, David. Mary, did you have an announcement?
This is just community announcement. The Saturday before the 24th, which is the 17th, Churches Caring for Creation are doing a styrofoam collection event like we did at Lloyd Noble a couple of years ago. If you want to bring any clean styrofoam to the First Presbyterian parking lot between 9 and 3, and that's on Saturday, the 17th. It's kind of an Earth Day event, but since the city isn't officially doing an Earth Day event, we're offering this. And if anyone would like to volunteer, you can get a hold of me. I'll be out of town, but I can set you up with a slot to volunteer for a couple hours. 9 to 3 on Saturday, the 17th.
Thank you, Mary. And then Sandra typed in the chat a reminder that today in Norman, we have a city election, and there's a bond maintenance issue, road maintenance issue on the ballot for those of us who live in Norman. So Polly Christian is there because she's a poll worker. And so get out and vote today, Normanites. And also, Polly wanted me to let everybody know that we'll be doing April birthdays next week since there's an election today and she's not here. So, so we have that. Any other announcements? Okay, so give it a little bit of time. So we'll move on to our speaker this morning. And so I have something here I'm going to read about our very own Michael Ridgeway here. And he wrote this himself. So speaker bios normally emphasize educational achievements and professional experience, and social media has generally conditioned us to expect people to serve up funny memes and photos of puppies and children. Michael Ridgeway could bore you with the usual fluffy fare, and he could produce a bio that tells things that are impressive but not important. Instead, he's going to serve up a much grittier true story of how he became who he is. Michael euphemistically tells people he has seen everything but the wind and been everywhere but the electric chair. He sometimes drops hints about what that means, but the details usually remain unspoken and mysterious. He will tell some of those details in a story today that illustrates why he cares about both those who have suffered and those who have caused pain to others. You will hear why he feels for children, and you will understand why he cares about those who are homeless, hungry, addicted, imprisoned, or otherwise unable to dig out of a hole. Ultimately, it is a story of connection, redemption, reconciliation, hope, and faith. For those who yearn for a more traditional approach, Michael is a lawyer and has been married to his wife, Judy, for 32 years. They have 5 children, 6 grandchildren, and live in a log house in far East Norman with their dog and constant companion, Kika, 6 cats, 2 horses, and a pet tractor named Elle. So with that, I give us our friend, Michael Ridgeway.
Well, thank you. First question is, can I share my screen?
I think so. I've turned off Sheen's screen sharing. Try it now. Okay. Okay, it's in the settings. Let me.
On mine, there's a share screen green box.
Yeah, I think it's in the settings though.
Jane, I made Michael a co-host, so he should be able to share his screen now.
Okay, thank you, Bob. So can you share now, Michael?
Well, I don't know. I'll tell you what, I'm just going to tell the story and without the PowerPoint.
Michael, do you have a share screen button down at the bottom of your screen?
Well, it says share up at the top.
Okay.
And when I click on it, it says send link.
Oh.
Let me just go ahead and talk.
Yeah. Okay.
The presentation's not important. It's important, but it's not necessary. So Pastor Joe Grizzle has historically given us a Christmas message. And a couple of years ago, his message was on connection, the importance of connecting with other people. And I went up to him after his talk, and a couple of people were standing there talking to him. And when they finished, I gave him just a 1-minute story about something from my life. And Bob Usry turned to me and said, with the emotion and love that only Bob can convey, he said, "You need to tell that story to the club." And so it's kind of, it's weighed on me ever since then. And I've thought, well, it's not really the kind of story that you normally tell in public, but okay, I will. We all have events that we think about every day. We all have events that change our lives. And so I'm going to tell about the one that Bob knows about and a few of you know about, but I'm also going to tell some other events from my life, some of which make me happy, some of which I feel shame over, but they all helped make me who I am today. I had a privileged childhood. I grew up middle class, upper middle class. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad was progressively climbed the corporate ladder. He, by the time that I was 13 years old, he had been promoted to vice president of Jones and Laughlin Steel Corporation. We lived in a 2-story house in Houston. My dad was the assistant baseball coach. He was the chairman of my Boy Scout troop committee. It was just kind of an idyllic childhood. By 7th grade, I knew that I wanted to be a lawyer. And shortly after my dad was promoted to vice president, we took a vacation to Colorado and hiked all over the mountains, had a grand time. Came home a couple of days later. My parents went out to dinner with some business colleagues of my dad's. We kids stayed home, went to bed like we were supposed to. We were all pretty good behaving kids. Next morning, July 20th, 1971, my mom woke me up and said, "I'm sorry to wake you up so early, but your dad died last night." And that began my spiraling into hell. That day, I heard my mom say that she was going to need some sleeping pills to sleep that night. And she took them, and she took them the next night and the next night. And she ended up getting a prescription for Quaaludes. And if you all are familiar with Quaaludes, or if you're not, they are an extremely sloppy, powerful sleeping pill. And she went from being a Kool-Aid mom, nurse, to overnight doing Quaaludes and drinking every single day. We moved from our beautiful 2-story executive home in Houston to a much more modest home in Tulsa. We left all of my friends behind. Moved up there to be closer to Mom's family. My mother began a series of overdoses where I would have to call the ambulance, and they would come and take her to the hospital and pump her stomach and keep her for a day or 2 days or 3 days. She developed cancerous indicators in her uterus and had a hysterectomy. She developed ulcers. She passed out one time and caught the bed on fire, and I had to call the fire department. I mean, we went from the idyllic, privileged childhood to an absolute hell. And I hear stories about people who have survived things like this and, done extremely well. I was not one of those. By the age of 15, I was smoking weed every day. by the age of 16, I was smoking weed every morning before school, every day at lunchtime, and I was drinking myself to unconsciousness every single night. I did that for years. I did that throughout high school. Somehow or other, I managed to work full-time during high school and consume enormous amounts of alcohol and drugs and graduate high school. I took the ACT test, the college test, hungover and stoned, and did pretty well on it, and got admitted to OU, went to OU, and I actually got into the honors program at OU. I had scored high enough on the ACT that I got into the honors program. And my first semester at college, I assume most of you are familiar with the 4-point scale. My first semester, I had a 0.46 grade point average. The next semester, I had a 1 point. And I stayed in college for 5 semesters, rocking along like that, using and abusing and not going to class and wasting my life away. And the thing that, you know, as I look back on it, I was so disconnected. I was so, you know, to give you an example, my first semester in college, I went home one time and I found out that my mom was in the hospital in a coma and she had been there for 2 days. And I asked my sister, why didn't you call me? And she said, it didn't even occur to me to call you. I was so disconnected. And part of it was my circumstances sucked. But part of it was that I was building a wall around myself. And the drugs and the alcohol were what made me feel comfortably numb. It was the only way that I could feel different. And I needed to feel different than I felt. And nothing else worked other than anesthetizing myself through alcohol and drugs. 1978, I crashed my VW bus into a concrete culvert. I went to Stillwater, and ironically, I was doing Quaaludes, my mom's drug of choice, and alcohol. And I decided at 2 o'clock in the morning that driving back to Norman would be a good idea. And I awoke with my VW bus in midair, and it crashed into a concrete culvert and went from 60 or 70 miles an hour to 0 just that fast. And I survived it and walked away from it and decided it was time to drop out of school. So I did, and moved to the Virgin Islands, as we do, and drank a lot of rum down there, and eventually came back and ended up in Abilene, Texas for a year. Didn't like Abilene, but I was involved in a brief relationship with a young lady there, and she turned up pregnant. I did not acknowledge paternity. I ended up moving away from Abilene, and I was, you know, I carried and carry the guilt and remorse of that. The pain when I hear stories about irresponsible fathers who abandon their responsibilities. I feel the anguish in a way that, you know, most people probably feel anger, and I feel not just anger, but also the guilt of it. Father's Day 1981, the child, my daughter, was born. When I left Abilene, I thought that I would be contacted by the Texas Department of Child Welfare to take a paternity test, but they never did contact me. I kept going downhill to the point where the winter of 1986-87, which was a really bad winter, we had snow on the ground for about 30 days during that winter, and I spent that winter living in a trailer without heat. I was driving a car that I bought for $400 from my mother and paid for with a hot check. My mother, by that time, had gotten herself together. She had quit the sleeping pills. She still drank occasionally, but not really to excess. And she was remarried, and she had gotten herself together. I had not. I was in a hole that I could not figure out how to get out of. It's easy to tell somebody when they're in a hole. What you need to do is to quit drinking, quit doing drugs, get a job, save money. It's easy to tell people that. But I was at the point where, like I said, I didn't have any heat. I didn't have any hot water. I went for days without taking a shower. The water was so cold that I couldn't keep my head under the faucet to wash my hair. My head was crusty with, just growtiness. It was just unbelievably awful existence. By August of 1987, I was actually going to my best friend's house, or best friend's wedding. And on the way, I stopped off at my mom's house to drop off my cat. She was going to take care of my cat for a couple of days. And I walked in, and there was my mom and my two sisters. And I said, "What are you guys doing here?" Well, they were there to do an intervention on me. And they told me that I needed to go to treatment. That I needed to get clean. I needed to get off of drugs and alcohol. I said, yeah, okay, whatever, and I left. And I went to my friend's wedding, and he sat me down. The night before the wedding, we were drinking. He was a drinking buddy from way back. We were both drunk, and he started telling me that I was out of control and I needed to do something about it. And I thought, oh my God, a guy that I'm sitting here drunk with, he's drunk and he's telling me that I need to do something. Anyway, I realized at that point that I was at a bottom, and so I called my mom and I said, okay, I'm gonna do it. And so the following Monday, I entered a treatment facility, inpatient. The first thing that they did was, well, I remember sitting in the room, the group room of that treatment facility, and looking up at the front. They had a banner with the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous posted at the front of the room. And I remember reading those 12 steps, and I could read the words. I could tell you what the words were. But when I would get to the end of a sentence, I couldn't tell you what the sentence said. And I couldn't understand what the sentence meant. My brain was in such a fog that I just couldn't focus on anything. They did a bunch of tests on me. They found that every chemical in my blood, every chemical in my urine was out of whack. My cholesterol was sky high. My liver was enlarged. My blood pressure was sky high. But probably the thing that killed me the most was when they told me that I had permanent brain damage. And there wasn't anything they could do about it. I spent 5 weeks in there. And by that time, some of the fog had lifted. I was able to think a little bit more clearly. That's something that developed, got clearer over the next few months and years. But I started trying to clear away the wreckage of my past. And one of the things that I did was, it's probably a couple of years sober when I did this, I decided to go back to Abilene and try to look up Dolores and my child. I went down there and I found out that Dolores had gotten married. And so I called this priest that I was working with on these amends that I was trying to make to people. And I told him, hey, I've found Dolores. She's remarried. And he said, don't contact her. If you go knock on their door, they're not going to welcome you with open arms. They're not going to be glad to see you. There's not anything you can do. They've moved on without you. Leave them alone. Let them live their lives. So I remember going on my way out of town, I stopped at an Arby's restaurant and ordered my food, and the lady was about to give me my change back, and she said, would you like to donate it? And I said, to whom? And she pointed at a sign, and it was Big Brothers, Big Sisters. And I said, yeah, I do want to donate it to Big Brothers and Big Sisters. So there was something symbolic about that warmed my heart a little bit. I left Abilene still feeling that hole in my soul, that pain, that guilt. Anyway, that's something that I just have to live with. I'm going to jump through a bunch of stuff that's really important in my life. I got married. I ended up going back to school. Judy and I had 2 miscarriages, and I thought that I was being punished by God for not acknowledging my first child, that God was not going to allow me to have a child. And so we ended up adopting a child, our son Charles, and then we eventually, in October of 1990, we had our daughter Amy. During this time, I had gone back to school and began making straight A's. And even with straight A's, at OU, if your grade point average is below 2.5, you're on academic probation. Well, I was on academic probation all the way until I graduated. My second to the last semester, even with making straight A's through sobriety, I had only raised my grade point average to a 2.49. But with the birth of my daughter, Amy, I think that gave me renewed hope. I believed that God was giving me another chance. And so if you remember back in 7th grade, I knew that I wanted to be a lawyer, but I blew my chance. And you can't get into law school with a 2.49 grade point average. But after Amy's birth, I decided I'm going to apply to law school. And so I did. And I sent my transcript, my 2.49 GPA, and my LSAT scores, and my admission essay that explained why I deserved to be in law school. And I thought maybe they'll admit me on this, they've got a special program that starts in the summer. Maybe they'll admit me to their special program. Well, they ended up giving me regular admission. They admitted me to law school with a 2.49 GPA. Never heard of it, but I got in. The first week of law school, we had to fill out what was called admission to the Oklahoma Bar Association as a law student. And it's an application where they do a background investigation on you and then admit you as a law student. I call it the Have You Ever questionnaire, because it's page after page of have you ever been sued? Have you ever been arrested? Have you ever smoked pot? Have you ever done drugs? Have you ever drank to excess? Have you ever crashed your car? Just all kinds of have you ever questions. And all my friends filled theirs out. No, sent it off. And a week or two later, they get their notice from the Bar Association. You're admitted as a student member. I send mine, or I fill mine out. Yes. And I have to attach supporting documents, and I attach all my supporting documents, and I put the packet together, and I spend $12 to mail it across the town to Oklahoma City. And this was back when postage was about a third of what it is nowadays. And I don't hear from them, and I don't hear from them, and I don't hear from them. I finally heard from them the following July. And what they said was, we need you to have a personal interview with the Board of Bar Examiners to see whether we're going to let you stay in law school. And so I had to go have a personal interview. And the result of that was they finally decided, okay, we're going to let you stay in law school, but we're not going to tell you whether you get to take the bar exam until after you graduate. We're going to re-review you after you graduate and decide whether you get to take the bar exam. I don't think I ever told any of my law school classmates any of this, but I went all the way through law school not knowing if I would ever be allowed to become a lawyer. Well, I did well in law school. I was allowed to take the bar exam. I passed. I became a lawyer. I did a variety of legal work when I first graduated, and I found that I hated family law. Hated it. But one day, Judy's ex-husband came into the office and told me a story about when he was young, he fathered a child, and he got divorced. He was married, he got divorced, he never paid child support. His parental rights were terminated, and the child was, his ex-wife got remarried, and the new husband adopted his child. And when somebody's adopted, they actually change the birth certificate. So the adoptive parent is listed on the birth certificate. So the result of that was that Bruce, Judy's ex-husband, his daughter's birth certificate said that another man was the father. And he had since reconciled with his daughter. His daughter at this point was 33 years old, and he was 52. And so he said, what can we do at this point to get her birth certificate to show me as her father? So I did some research, and I figured out the only way that this can be accomplished, you can't set the old adoption aside. It's too much time has passed. The only way to do it is to do an adoption. So I did the legal process for Bruce to adopt his biological daughter. And then we got a court order changing her amended birth certificate to reflect that her biological father has adopted her. And the result of it is that her biological father is now listed on her birth certificate. It was a real heartwarming thing for me. It really touched me because of my own experience, and it was a healing legal process for me. It gave me hope. And you know, it gave me a feeling of connection, I guess. There's a philosophy nowadays that the opposite of addiction is connection, is human connection. And I really believe that. That really resonates for me. For me, it's important. The connection with my mother that was reestablished through the intervention, the connection with my best friend when he did an intervention on me, the connection that I've established with my wife and my stepson and my adopted son and my biological daughter. And, you know, all of those have become incredibly, incredibly important. And I could end the story there, but I'm not going to, because there's a chapter in the story that I think is really, really, really important to tell. And it's the one that Bob Usry urged me to tell. And that is that you remember that in 2018-19, I was the president of Sooner Rotary. And we traditionally, the president will meet with his board prior to the year starting. And so I had like a brunch meeting on Saturday, I think it was June 16th or something of 2018. And before the meeting started, it was like 10 o'clock in the morning or something. And a few minutes before people were to arrive, I sat down and opened my laptop and checked Facebook, and there was a Facebook message there. And it was from somebody named Debbie York. And the name didn't mean anything to me. So I clicked on her profile and I looked at her picture and I thought, why does this woman have my sister's picture on her Facebook page? And I clicked back to the message and it said, I'm sure this is an exceptional long shot, but I wonder if you ever knew a woman
Hey,
by
do
the
you have
name-
any appointments left today? Oh, no.
Sparks, you need to mute yourself. I'm sure this is an exceptional long shot, but I wonder if you ever knew a woman by the name of Dolores. She would have lived in Abilene, Texas in 1981. She's my mother, and she claims that a man named Michael Ridgeway is my father. I only ask to know a little more about my family history, nothing more really. I've just always been curious. If not, I apologize for bothering you. Debbie York, parentheses, Ridgeway. About that time, Linda Holt and Jane Purcell showed up at my door, and I had to close my computer and carry on and try to hold it together during the meeting with the board. If any of you feel like I hurried you out of that meeting that morning, I did. And as soon as I could wrap things up and get everybody out of my house, I went to Judy, who was in the kitchen cleaning up. And I said, you need to come sit down. I need to talk to you. And she said, okay, just a minute. I said, no, not just a minute. You need to come right now. And I showed her this, and she knew the story about the child, and she was absolutely ecstatic. And I sat down and I typed a message to this Debbie York that said, yes, 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 I've wondered about you. I don't even know where to start. My telephone number is, I live in Norman, Oklahoma, just south of Oklahoma City. I would like it if you came to my home or I could come to you. To get the ball rolling, I'll suggest July 4th. I want to answer all your questions. My wife has known about you for over 30 years. She is as enthusiastic as I am. We want to be part of your life. We already have a crib and toys and high chair and car seat, so you don't need to bring all that. I mean, I was babbling. I was ecstatic. We ended up connecting a couple of weeks later. We ended up getting together. We ended up taking a blood test just to confirm everything. And the odds are 21 billion to 1 that I am the father. That's pretty good odds. Excludes pretty much everybody in the entire world except for me. I tried to figure, we found out she thought I was on her birth certificate. When she pulled it out, she found out her birth certificate didn't list a father. Nobody acknowledged paternity and no father was listed. So having done this before, I thought about, well, I could do an adoption, but that just didn't seem right to me. So what I finally hit upon was I drafted a petition for determination of paternity, a paternity lawsuit styled Debbie York versus Michael Ridgeway. If you want to go on OSCN, you can look it up. OSCN.net has the court case on it. It's filed here in Cleveland County. I drafted the petition, set it up for Judy, my wife, to be the attorney for Debbie York. Filed suit against myself, went down to the courthouse and filed it myself. Took along an answer that I had drafted for myself in which I admitted all of the allegations in the petition that I had drafted. And also took along an order determining paternity, which I hand carried to Judge Balkman. went into Judge Balkman, who I've known for years, and I told him the story. And he shook his head and said, I've never heard anything like this. But I think it made his day. And he signed that petition. And then I ended up doing some paperwork with the Texas Bureau of Vital Statistics and got Debbie's birth certificate changed so that I'm on her birth certificate. That would also be a good place to end the story, but there's one more family law case that I've got to tell you about, and that is Debbie is married, has a wife who gave birth to twins in 2019, and Judy and I were there when the twins were born, and Debbie adopted those twins to confirm her rights as a parent. She hired an attorney in Austin, Texas, and she asked us to be there for the adoption proceeding. There's something called getting admitted pro hoc vice, which is where an out-of-state lawyer can become admitted for a particular cause in a state where they're not admitted to practice law. And I ended up getting admitted pro hoc vice in the Travis County Court in Austin, Texas, and I was co-counsel on the adoption proceedings. And when I went to court on that, I got to stand up and introduce myself not only as the petitioner's father, but also as the petitioner's attorney. So I got to represent my daughter in the adoption of my twin grandsons. So you know, I think the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is human connection. And my life, although I had 16 years of hell, I think that the richness of my life since then, the things that I've experienced, the joys that I've experienced, the redemption, the reconciliation, the love that I've felt and the love that I've been able to share with others, the hope that I have for, not just for myself, but for people who are addicted, people who are alcoholic, people who are homeless, people who are incarcerated. I've got hope for them. I've got faith that God has a plan for all of us. And, you know, there was a time in my life when I couldn't see that plan and I couldn't see any possibility. But what's ended up coming true is far beyond what I ever could have imagined, even in my idyllic childhood. So I think I'll conclude there since it's 7:59, but I do want to welcome Debbie York, my daughter I know is on the call, Harrison Mbugi, who's a semi-adopted son from Tanzania, and Judy is on here. And I don't know who else is on here, but anyway, welcome and thank you for the opportunity to share this. I appreciate the connection with all of you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. And I don't know if you looked at the chat, but I have to concur with Katie that this is the best program ever. So thank you for your honesty and candor in sharing what, you know, a lot of people would consider, you know, too painful to discuss. But and reminds us of the importance of connection and redemption. So thank you. Is it okay to, if anybody has a question for you, Michael?
Yeah.
So does anybody have questions or anything that they would like to share with Michael?
Thank you, Michael, for sharing that. I think everyone
heart is better today because of you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob.
And I'm so glad that your family was able to join us this morning. So I know
Yeah.
that he always, if you don't know, like Michael, I'm just kind of going to say this, but like he, in our meetings when he does discuss family, he always talks about his wife and his children with such love and joy. It's always been, one of the characteristics that I've realized about you, Michael, is, your family is always so central to who you are. And it's a good, good thing to remember. And it's lovely to see. But if we don't have questions and everything, thank you so much, Michael, for sharing your story this morning. I'm going to check in with Jonna to see how things are going with her this week. And we do have a board meeting this Friday, so I'll be sending out, I think, a Zoom link, or Jonna will. I'll see what she wants to do. But thank you for being here this morning.
Hey, Jane.
Yeah.
There's Debbie and my granddaughter Amelia down. I don't know where she is on your screen, but I can see her.
Thank you, Michael, for sharing your story, and I found sharing your story. Sorry.
Thanks, Zach.
Oh, there's the little granddaughter. Look. Oh.
Yeah. Hey, Amelia.
Hi, Amelia.
Hey, baby girl.
Put her on the spot.
Yeah. She's like, who are all these people? Oh, well, thank you for being here with us this morning. And we'll go ahead and take off, but thank you so much.
Okay.
All right. Have a great week, everybody. Go out and connect in the world. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rosie.